All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Tamara Holmes. I'm the Director of the Office of Broadband at the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. And again, we're here to discuss the Utility Leverage Program. Next slide, Chandler. Up the doorbell. So today's agenda will consist of me doing the welcome, and then we're going to go over the Utility Leverage Program, just really the foundation of the program. And we're going to go over some proposed changes that we've made to the draft guidelines. And then we'll have some questions and answers, and then we'll discuss next steps. Just when I thought the doorbell would stop. So next slide, Taylor. All right, so just to lay the foundation, this program was established through the Code of Virginia, which basically allows anyone that wants to submit a proposed project to us to designate an area unserved by broadband. The unserved designation happens through a couple of different ways. One is we make a public notice on the proposed finding, which means that we take the petition that's submitted by a petitioner and we post that publicly on our website. And then that gives opportunities for any third parties to challenge the petition. Unserved certifications is one step in a process that allows investor-owned utilities to make or provide broadband capacity available to ISPs in areas unserved by broadband. So this is just really the foundation of the program. We wanted to share with you all where you can find that within the Code of Virginia. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Chandler, who will provide more details.
Thanks, Tamara. So for folks that may be unfamiliar with how we do these input sessions, we're going to go through the major changes of the guidelines document, or at least the proposed changes that we as staff are proposing to the industry, to stakeholders. And then all those comments are going to be considered that we receive an email to the broadband@dhcd.virginia.gov email address. So, and again, as Tamara said earlier, if you're just joining us by Google Meet, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box. And then we're also going to take a stop at the end for folks that might have questions that are joining us by phone. So to go over the proposed changes to the guidelines, the first proposed guideline change is an addition. And that's if the petition is submitted by someone other than a phase 1 or phase 2 utility, Dominion Energy or Appalachian Power, the petitioner, whether that be an ISP or a local government or anybody, has to provide a copy of a MOU or MOA with that investor-owned utility, indicating that they intend to partner with the petitioner to provide or make available broadband capacity to internet service providers in that petition area. So adding the requirement of an MOU or an MOA with that investor-owned utility. Again, just to ensure that these petitions that are being submitted may actually turn into a utility leverage project later on down the road. Another proposed guideline addition, and that proposed addition is that all shapefiles submitted by the petitioner must exclude state and authorized federal awards in the proposed project areas. So an authorized federal award, what we mean by that is that the Federal Communications Commission or whatever federal entity that is designating and giving out those awards has issued that award is final. So for example, in the RDOF auction currently, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, those awards have been announced, but they haven't been finalized. So if a petitioner files a petition under these new guidelines, they would not have to exclude those RDOF awards because they're not an authorized federal award. But say an authorized federal award in the CAF2 auction, those would have to be excluded because there has been final determination on those awards. And then we'll work with a petitioner. If you're unsure of where a state broadband funding award is, we'll work with you before the process starts to make sure those areas are also removed from a petition area filing. This is a proposed guideline revision. So previously in the guidelines, challengers must demonstrate that a serviceable unit in the project area was served by the time that petition was filed. This proposed revision would make that date as of the challenge submission deadline. We recognize that a lot of ISPs may be actively building networks while these petitions are under review. So we're proposing the change of this date from making an eligible serviceable unit to be challenged instead of by the time the petition is filed, and shifting that to by the challenge submission deadline. So if any network is constructed during that petition review process, those areas could be considered as an eligible challenge to a proposed petition. And then quickly, I'll answer the question in the chat. These slides will be made available on the website for the Utility Leverage Program, and the recording as well afterwards. So a proposed guideline edit, I'll be quick on this one. Instead of street level data of customers within the proposed project area, changing this to street level data of serviceable units within the proposed project area. This is a requirement of challengers if you plan on challenging a petition area and formally stating that you have serviceable units in the area. This was a point of confusion in the past process reviewing the current petitions that are under consideration. We don't need to know the names of customers when we're reviewing whether or not these areas are served or not. So we're just removing the word customers here and putting street level data of serviceable units within the proposed project area if you're submitting a challenge to a petition. And again, just for formality, this reinstates what we just said on the last slide, street level data of customers. We would delete that, replace it with street level data of serviceable units. And then we're also proposing the deletion of the second bullet there, using the project area map submitted by the applicant, create a map indicating where the challenger serviceable units are located in the proposed project areas. Challengers are encouraged to submit additional maps and information if necessary. This does not mean we don't want to know where your challenged area is. There's a requirement of challengers to submit point and polygon shape files of their serviceable units in the petition area. We can generate maps off of that, based upon the point and polygon shape files we receive. So proposing the deletion of challengers having to submit us PDF maps of those areas in the challenged area within the petition. And the last slide for guideline edits are around the review timeline. So DHCD receives a petition. We have to post that petition within 7 days after they're received on the DHCD website, assuming all the materials are complete. If they're not complete, of course, we're going to get all those figured out before we post it online. Providers wishing to submit a challenge must provide the information required no later than 30 days from the date the petition is posted on the DHCD website. This is after we send out a formal email blast to all the folks that are signed up to receive utility leverage petition notifications. And that link is available to sign up for those email notifications on the website. So if a petition is challenged, the petitioner will be notified that the proposed project area is challenged and has 7 days from that notification to provide rebuttal information to DHCD. This is a change from 7 business days to 7 days, proposed change rather. DHCD may extend any portion of the review period if petition volume or other circumstances necessitate extension. And then lastly there at the bottom, to put a formal timeline on final notification, the final notification will be issued no later than 45 days after the challenge window has closed. So that wraps up the summary of changes to the guidelines. We want to open it up for Q&A now. So again, if you're on Google Meet, we'd ask that you put your questions or comments in the chat box. And then after those have all been addressed, we'll open it up to folks on the phone.
So while we're waiting for folks to put their questions in the chat box, or the folks that are on the phone to go over to those folks, just some important dates to remember. The public comment period for these proposed guidelines, which are available on our website, they close on Friday, October 15th. And then after that, we will release the updated guidelines, which they'll be posted on Town Hall for additional 30 days. So just to clarify what the next steps are, public comment window closes on Friday. You submit all your comments to broadband@dhcd.virginia.gov. And then we'll be posting the final guidelines on Town Hall on November 8th.
Well,
Go ahead, Chairman.
Yes, if there aren't any questions from folks on the Google Meet platform, any questions or comments from folks that are calling in? Last call for anybody over the phone with questions or comments. Last call for folks on Google Meet with questions or comments.
Hey, Chandler, this is Tom Walls of Verizon. One of those provisions, I think, provided for an extension of the time for a challenge if there was a large volume of petitions. Is that right?
So I'll go back to the slide. I think you're hitting on two things there. So currently the challenge review timeline for challengers is 15 business days. We're proposing that be extended to a total of 30 days. And then also the second part of your comment there, DHCD may extend any portion of the review period if petition volume or other circumstances necessitate extension. So that could be the challenge window. That could be also DHCD's internal review period, could be the rebuttal window. So any portion of the review timeline.
Is there any criteria for that? When you would
petition for petition volume? I mean, currently there's, about 21 petitions under review, right? So that's an example of petition volume necessitating extension.
Albert Taylor asked if there was a certain time period in which ULP petitions could be submitted, like body applications, or if they can be submitted anytime.
Good question. Those can come in at any time. And just for additional detail on that, if a petition is submitted before October 29th, those will abide by the current guidelines. But if they're submitted after October 29th, those will be under the effect of these new guidelines with revisions accounted for. So ULP petitions can come in at any time to be considered.
And Jennifer McClellan had asked if the comments are if this is only for public comment or if this is supposed to include a discussion of the proposed guidelines.
Apologies for the delay, just reading through the question on my end as well. Comments can come through, this venue, but also, we're encouraging folks to submit comments in written form to this email address, broadband@dhcd.virginia.gov by Friday. So, happy to entertain comments here, but, for record keeping purposes, we prefer they come in written form at that email address by Friday.
Tim McCormick asked if we could go back to the slide regarding street level customer data or street level serviceable unit data. It's a proposed changed. And then Jimmy Card asked, what does DHCD consider a reasonable number of customers for the purpose of making a challenge? Is there a take rate percentage required to demonstrate actual coverage?
So to answer that, no, there's not a take rate percentage required to demonstrate actual coverage. And a reasonable amount of customers in the challenged area, we look at that and we look at how many actual subscribers there are in a particular challenged area. And the word reasonable there, we don't want to see a challenge come in to invalidate a petition area if there's just one or two served units in 5 square miles, right? So it's more of an eye test to see if there's actually a reasonable number of served units and not just a 1-off or a 2-off in a petition area that would invalidate those 1 or 2 passings.
And then just to add to Chandler's point, which is part of the guidelines now that we're not making a change to, we do reserve the right to request speed tests. So if there's ever some inconsistencies between maybe a provider having a certain number of customers, and then as Chandler discussed earlier, the area is a fairly large area, and there's some inconsistencies between, is it really the services available or maybe it's not reliable? So we do reserve the right to request speed test data from anyone that challenges a petition.
Last call again for folks on Google Meet in the chat box or over the phone.
Jennifer McClellan.
Good. Tom again. If a petition is not challenged, does the department make any determination at all of its own as to the actual merits of the petition?
So if a petition isn't challenged, we'll review it for state and federal funding in the petition area. And then, assuming there's no federal or state awards in that petition, we'll issue determination that says this petition area is unserved.
So this is Jennifer McClellan. If I can ask a follow-up question. So does that mean even if a petition, if a petition seeks to serve an area that is identifiable on an existing map, service maps from a provider or the FCC, or eventually the department under the 2021 Special Session Appropriations Act is supposed to be developing a map of served and unserved areas? So if a petitioner, even if the petition is not challenged, but based on one of those sources I identified, the department could readily see an area is actually served, will that petition be granted or not?
So I think, so to your point, yes, the goal would be to hopefully use the new state broadband map that will hopefully be available in April moving forward to determine if area is served or not. Right now, because of the discrepancy in just the data that's reported to the FCC, the overstatement of coverage, we, which is why we developed the guidelines the way they are, we do anticipate updating the guidelines next year once the broadband map is available. But right now, because there is an overstatement of coverage, several providers are still unwilling to give us information of their service territory, which we do have FOIA, guys. I just want to let you know. You could, if you're a provider within the Commonwealth and the map is not ready, you could, through FOIA, provide us your service territory information, and we could use that to make informed decisions on petitions that are submitted. It's just at this point, not many providers have been willing to give us that information. So to your point, yes, we do plan on using the new broadband availability map to help make the decisions moving forward with the ULP program. It's just right now, we just don't have the data in-house to do that.
And Senator, I'll just add, this is Evan Fundman. Tamara and her team are going to do their best to make the correct call. I mean, if they have, they are probably the single group of people at this point that have the best understanding, having reviewed in detail all of the different applications that have come in over the last several years. If they have knowledge that an area is served, they're not going to designate it as unserved. They want to get this right, not just sort of mechanistically follow a process.
Thank you. And so that the record is clear, I am here in my professional capacity as an employee of Verizon, and not, I appreciate you calling me Senator McClellan, but here I'm not here in my official capacity.
I hear you. That's just tough. Got to stay in some habits.
I understand.
And then I will say, just because you guys know we did launch the guidelines for the broadband availability. I think we did. Was that last week? Sorry, my programs are blending together. We did launch the guidelines for the broadband availability map. So I would encourage anyone that's on this call from the industry who will be providing the data, us take a look at what we're looking for providers to provide to us, and understand that you do have the ability through that, through that effort moving forward, because I think the portal will officially open in less than 30 days based on our proposed guidelines. So you can, in the meantime, again, seek FOIA protection from the agency and work with us to give us your service data and then eventually provide it through the mapping effort with Virginia Tech. So, but we're more than welcome to take the data and use your data to make the informed decisions until we either build our state broadband map, which will beat the FCC's map. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Jimmy Card asked if we can provide petitioners with more information on the basis of why a location was challenged, whether it was challenged because it was a wireline service available, wireless service available, or awarded federal or state funding.
You know, we'd certainly entertain that if it came in as a public comment to the broadband email address. I think that we've got to study that and see if that would violate any FOIA exemption that we granted to a serviceable unit of a petitioner or of a challenger, excuse me. So yeah, happy to entertain that as submitted as a public comment.
Do we have any other questions from anyone on the phone?
Okay, I had put one in the chat. I don't think
I'm
Chad
sorry.
answered it. That's okay.
Yes, you'd asked, what is the standard for the level of efforts a petitioner must make to identify existing providers?
I can take that one, Chandler. So the hope is that if someone's working on a utility leverage project, is that they've actually had some communication with the unit of local government, that they've done some research around existing providers. We do not currently require, which if someone wants to put in a comment, that they've actually gotten, communication back from an incumbent provider within a community. But we do ask if they've reached out to other companies. I guess it really depends on the communication and relationships. We can actually serve as a conduit for that. So if there's a provider and they're not aware of providers that are in a locality, we can, we do have a list of providers. I will tell you through the EOP process, I've learned so much more about new providers that we don't have a relationship with in the body program anyway, that we're able to connect them with them. But it just, I guess it's also the willingness of the potential challenger or the petitioner to reach out, but also for the person that would be a challenger willing to have that conversation with someone that's submitting a petition for area they serve. We hope, just in the body program, that folks are having these conversations up front before they actually submit a challenge, so that they can work it out between themselves. But often that doesn't happen. Right? That happens very rarely.
So this is Tom Walls here with a follow-up to that question. Is it then fair to say that in the current draft, there is no standard or no set of requirements regarding what effort a petitioner must make to identify existing providers if they choose not to?
I'm looking at the current guidelines now. We don't have any proposed changes about requirements for contact and outreach to incumbent internet providers, but the current guidelines read that petitioners must list existing providers near the proposed project area and describe outreach efforts to identify existing providers and to ensure overlap was avoided and how this information was compiled with sources. And I do want to clarify for folks generally as well, these proposed guideline edits, additions, deletions, revisions, comments can be made on those and comments can be made on the guidelines largely. Public comments are not limited to just these, tenets that are proposed in the slide deck here. Public comments can be made on any portion of the guidelines.
Tom, I'd be curious, what would be some things you would want to see in that aspect?
Well, that's a pretty big category.
Right.
I'm more concerned with the general principle that there be some minimum standard.
Okay.
Otherwise, the burden is shifted.
I guess.
Well,
I
on
guess
some level, though.
Oh, go ahead, Evan.
Sorry,
you might be
go ahead,
you might be
Mary.
thinking exactly what I'm thinking. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, Tom, when we're getting down to the real edges, because we don't want to overbuild you. We frankly don't have the resources. We need to get it right. The applicant can make as good a guess as they can make, but y'all are the ones who know where you are and where you aren't. And so, they can and should tighten it up as much as possible. But at some point, for us to figure out where we've got to tell them to stop, we're going to have to hear it from the incumbent. There's not another better way to do it.
I understand that. I just wanted to be sure that the guidelines are provided for the first part of your statement, that they actually are required to be thorough about it.
Sure, I get that.
And I guess I'm curious, one of the ways I know, because we have this, this comes up during the body process too. If there was a way where we could serve as a conduit for that, or not necessarily connect folks, but have the right point of contacts within the companies that are incumbents within communities in Virginia, that would be really helpful. I think that could also help facilitate a conversation. We do that kind of organically because of body, but with the ULP program, we're coming up against communities where we haven't had body projects. We're also hearing from providers that have not been a part of the body process. So if there was a way we could get contacts with companies throughout the Commonwealth, so that if a petition does come up, or if a petitioner is or someone's interested in submitting a petition, they would be able to go somewhere and get that contact information for the company that's the incumbent in a county.
Any other questions from anyone on Google or on the phone?
Well, to everybody that joined on the call, we appreciate you taking 32 minutes of your time on a Tuesday morning to hear more about the proposed changes to the guidelines. Again, public comments are due this Friday to the email address on the screen there. But for folks over the phone, that's broadband@dhcd.virginia spelled out .gov. So we'll read through those comments as they're received. And thanks again for spending some time this morning.